It's hard to believe what's happening, the brutality of it.
Hello everybody, welcome to the newest episode of MAFF'S Movie Show. I'm your host, as always. I still don't know. Today we are going to talk about the last Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man 3, released in 2007, once again starring Tobey Maguire, Kirsten Dunst, and James Franco, and now we have Topher Grace as Eddie Brock, Venom, Bryce Dallas Howard as Gwen Stacy, and Thomas Hayden Church as the Sandman. Like a professional critic, I took notes, and I have quite a few things to say, apparently. Christopher Young's score is great. It really is. I think the themes that he implements into this movie for the Sandman and for Venom, the dark side of Peter Parker, a lot of great music in this movie that really enhances the elements that don't really work so well. Dramatic Franco and balcony reveal. Yeah, with the opera glasses. One of my favorite parts of the movie just because it's so stupid. Dave Franco's goblin costume is dumb AF. Yes. Transformation just ... happens. Because it does. There's a scene in the first movie with Willem Dafoe when he gets the serum and he becomes a goblin and he kills his scientist friend and blah blah blah. It's a really fun, dramatic, horrific scene, and it works in that movie. Here he just kind of, he walks out of the thing, out of the chamber, and he's like, yeah, I guess I'm a goblin now. I have Venom wrapped in quote unquote stars, asterisks, whatever you want to call them, because Venom is a big key contributor to what breaks or makes this movie for people, and for, I guess, and just the production of this movie really broke Sam Raimi and tarnished his relationship, if not already before that, with Sony, so that even when they decided to come back to make a Spider-Man 4, that didn't happen. Sony really screwed things up this time with Sam Raimi and his vision for this third Spider-Man movie, which was originally supposed to have other villains, but really the Sandman was the focus, and everybody wanted Venom in this movie. We'll get to that. I love Sandymans. That is true. I think one of the best elements of this movie is Thomas Hayden Church as that character, the Sandman. Pete versus Harry, one-on-one b-ball. Yeah. So there's a part in this movie where Peter Parker gives Harry a basketball because they used to play back in the day, and it's so random. They're just b-balling, dribbling through the halls of Harry's rich estate. It's just weird. Why would Pete kiss Gwen? Question mark. Yeah, I agree. Peter Parker in this movie is such an asshole, but even with the persona of Spider-Man, getting the keys to the city, having a whole parade to himself, and having that bravado and that confidence, yes, I get that he would be a little bit of a jerk, but literally copying your first kiss with the love of your life with this other woman in front of everybody in New York City who is at this parade. He does this before he gets the black suit. This is Peter Parker doing this, not the jerk version of Peter Parker after the black suit. Big yikes. But yeah, let me run through my personal journey with Spider-Man 3. I was so hyped for this movie. This was during the beginning of the hype of the internet, back in the early days of YouTube, and when a big movie was coming out, it really felt like a big movie was coming out. With The Dark Knight and this, the marketing campaigns were ginormous. They felt ginormous. Me, especially being a young kid during those times, I liked it. And there are some things that I didn't think felt right for these movies, like the dancing and the jazz stuff. But I bypassed it because I was 13 years old, and I was like, I love these movies, so I can't not love it. And then the internet happened, and people hated on it, and I was convinced that the internet was right, and I now did not like this movie, and Spider-Man 3 was garbage. And then fast forward years later, and people came around this movie on Twitter and such, whatever. People have a new appreciation for it because it still has the Sam Raimi feel, and the elements that do work, like I mentioned before, work so well that it overtakes, and I think it allows one to forgive the issues that people may have with the movie. And that's how I feel now. I think a lot of it isn't good. I think a lot of this movie is a mess. And story-wise, it's all over the place. The whole thing with Uncle Ben, we're just supposed to believe that the robber that Peter Parker accidentally murdered in the first movie had an accomplice who just happened to accidentally shoot Uncle Ben which creates this whole theme of the movie, which is forgiveness. And I do like the idea of forgiveness being the centralized theme in this movie. I think it works in a lot of ways, and I think the emotions are there. And even like the whole last part with Harry dying and sacrificing himself, it's all cheesy, it's all stupid, but I still enjoy how it feels. Because this movie, despite all of its dumb story and plot issues, I still really appreciate the moments of emotion, because this is the conclusion to Sam Raimi's story with Tobey Maguire. And I just, it's a mix of the nostalgia, the memories I have with this movie. I still think Tobey Maguire, even though this is his worst performance as the character in my opinion, he still shines through here. Again, Christopher Young's score that really helps elevate a lot of the scenes in this movie. And like I mentioned before, Thomas Hayden Church as the Sandman. I think there's something really special there in that character that I just can't focus on. Anytime there was a scene with him, especially watching it this time around, I really cared for what was going on. The scene where he sneaks into his ex-wife and his daughter's apartment. That's a great scene. The scene where it's not really him, it's beautiful CGI that took months and months and months to create. But when he first becomes the Sandman and he's trying to grab the locket, that's an incredibly beautiful scene, probably one of the top 3 scenes in the entire movie. And then when Peter Parker gets consumed by the symbiote and kills Sandman, that's a real oh shit moment. Sitting down and watching this movie this past time, I was thoroughly entertained by it. And every time I've watched this movie I've seen it like 4 or 5 times over the past year just because it's always on TV. I'm always engaged in what's going on. And call it what you want, it's a bias of nostalgia, rose-colored glasses. But I could still acknowledge the problems with this movie. The whole thing with the symbiote, I'm saying it like John Ralphio's sister in the Venom movie with Tom Hardy. The symbiote, the black alien goo, Venom as a character, the whole reason why he was put in this movie was to sell movie tickets. And it worked, because this movie made a lot of money. This movie has so much going on. You could tell, especially if you watch these movies in succession, between like the flowing of the story, the flow in general, there's a flow in the first 2 movies. It's more fast-paced in the first one. Second one's more methodical and slow-paced and builds up to the great action. This one, there's so much going on. Even you can tell in the first 10 minutes, first 10, 15 minutes, they're introducing so many different characters, and we're being whiplashed here, then there, then here, then here again. We got to introduce this character, and we got to do this, and we got to introduce that, then we also got to establish that this is happening, but it's all happening so unorganically. You feel like you're on a rocky roller coaster that's seen better days and has been running for way too long and should be shut down, because if it stays any longer, it's going to cause harm to people. I'm not going to say anything about Peter Parker dancing and hip thrusting and being a weirdo at the jazz club with Gwen Stacy. And it's just what's been said on the internet. There's beating a dead horse. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. It is what it is. Don't get me started on, even though I am about to go on a little mini rant about Harry Osborn. Even people don't like the Green Goblin costume from the first movie, but it would have been, I like it a lot personally, but they couldn't have just done something like that again for this movie. They made him look like a snowboarder in this third movie. The design of it just makes no sense to me. You want to look cool and intimidating and imposing to strike fear into your best friend for killing your dad, and this is what you choose. And then we have the whole amnesia subplot with him just forgetting everything conveniently, which I didn't care about when I first saw it when I was in the theater. And I've heard it beaten over like a dead horse again, like the jazz and the dancing 100,000 times. It doesn't bother me like that, but it is stupid that that's what they decided to go with for this character that has been built up with 2 movies. You decided to go with this angle. And it's because they had to make room for other things. I am sure as part of the contribution to the conversation when they made this movie was, but we had to make room for Venom, and we had to make room for Tobey Maguire getting the black suit with the symbiote, and we had to make room for Sandman, because Sam Raimi really wants to use the Sandman. This is his character. He made this movie for Sandman in the first place, so we had to mix, match, and jumble everything. I like Topher Grace in this movie. I think he's an interesting inversion of Peter Parker as a character, and I like where they go with him. I like Topher Grace's interpretation of the character. It works for this story and this world that Sam Raimi created. My favorite moment with Topher Grace in this movie is when he loses his girlfriend, Gwen Stacy, and he loses his job because you're trash, Brock. Because he photoshopped a picture of Spider-Man in the Daily Bugle. He goes into church, he kneels with such conviction and looks at the statue of Jesus Christ and asks God to kill Peter Parker. He asks God to kill a person. Like, genuinely wants God to kill somebody. It's so stupid, but I love it so much. It's my favorite moment with that character in this movie. It's so absurd. But I guess the last thing I really want to just touch on is the ending of this movie, which I actually do think is a really impactful ending, seeing as the last two movies we had really fun, entertaining final swings. The second movie, as I mentioned last week, having that moment of pondering and realization with Mary Jane at the very last shot. In this movie, we decide we don't have any final swing. Harry dies. We have that scene where Harry, MJ, and Peter are just an emotional mess. And I actually like that little moment. It really helps that Christopher Young's score in that scene kills it. We have the funeral, and then Mary Jane has the job at this jazz club, and Peter Parker walks in and asks Mary Jane to take his hand, and they dance. Like, it's like a reunion, but we don't know if they're going to get back together. We don't know what's going to happen after this. The movie just kind of fades out, and that's how this trilogy of Spider-Man movies ends. And I was watching the Kind of Funny re-review of this movie, and Peter Parker in this moment, he is being selfish, and I never really thought about that before, that he's really asking Mary Jane to like step away from her job to dance with him in this moment and console and reconcile, and she ain't asked for that. But like he's being selfish and being like, I'm here right now and I need you. Do this with me. And I understand that, but I do think it's a really beautiful, poignant, and emotional moment to end your movie on. And it really makes me sad that we never got a chance to get a new iteration and a new entry in this world, because I would love to see what happens from here. I know Sam, like I mentioned, I touched on it really quick before, Sam Raimi was going to make the fourth movie. It was supposed to come out in 2011, and in 2010, early 2010, it was poised to start production, and then, I don't want to get into it here, but there was issues, and Sam Raimi decided to walk off the project. Within that same month's time frame, they cast a new Spider-Man and kicked off production for the new movie, Amazing Spider-Man, which would come out 2 years later with Andrew Garfield, which is insane to me. I really wish we would have gotten that fourth movie. I really do. I hope we get to see a script one day or hear, I don't know, some documentary. I would love to see something. And we don't have a Chad Kroeger hero. We don't have a Dashboard Confessionals Vindicated. But I do think the Signal Fire song from Snow Patrol is actually a really good song. And I think it fits for this movie very well. I listened to that song countless times. And I like Snow Patrol. And I like that song. I can't believe I ended my discussion of Spider-Man 3 right now with thoughts on Snow Patrol. But I did. And that's my thoughts on Spider-Man 3. I initially liked it. Then I hated it because the internet told me to hate it. And then I realized, I'm my own man. Let me watch it again. No, I actually like this movie. Problems at all. I think it's definitely the weakest entry in the Sam Raimi movies. I think the plot is all over the place. And it's a big mess. The cringe is so cringe. But what works for me. And it's still a Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, and I will always enjoy watching any Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, especially the first two, but I enjoy this too. It's not the best conclusion for the characters, far from it actually, but I still love watching it. I am very curious how I'm going to feel going back to Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 these next couple weeks, because I love Andrew Garfield. I love his take on the character, and Mark Webb's vision, even though they're all over the place between the first and the second one. We'll get to it, but there's a lot to talk about, at least with me, with those movies. I'm really excited to go back and revisit those. But I want to know from you guys right now, what do you think of Spider-Man 3? Have you seen it in a minute? Have you watched it recently? What are your thoughts on it from the last time you watched it? Do you hate it? Are you in like the minority, I guess, of people who actually probably prefer it over the first two? Because I've heard that also. I've heard people who like 3 over 1 and 2, which sounds bonkers to me, but I'm not going to destroy your opinion. Everybody has their own opinions. I know people who like Attack of the Clones over the original Star Wars movies. which sounds asinine to me, but it's beautiful that we all have different thoughts on different things in art, and I love it. But I would love to hear somebody out there tell me why they like Spider-Man 3 over the first two. I would love to have that discussion. But yeah, what do you think about it? If you enjoyed watching this and you're still here listening and watching me talk, thank you for still being here. Thank you for supporting, and thank you. I hope you enjoyed watching me talk about this movie. If you haven't already, you could like, you could subscribe, you could ring the bell, and you can comment down below, and we'll have some fun discussions. Thank you guys for tuning in again. I appreciate the support. I love all of you. Next week, we'll be talking about Amazing Spider-Man 1, the first one from 2012. We have a new trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home coming on Tuesday. They're doing a fan event live in LA, and they said some big surprises are coming. I mean, I'm not going to talk about it, but leaks came out that may or may not be real, that involve some things, and if they're trying to put those suspicions to bed, I have a feeling it's going to be a pretty wild Tuesday night. I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Have a safe week. Love all y'all. Peace.